started.
Okay. Any stragglers come in, we'll be able to catch them up. So my name is Dan Connery. I work at the Dane County Veterans Service Office. I'm the Veterans Service Director there. I've been at the County Veterans Service Office. I'm in my 20th year actually in the office. And as the Veterans Service Director, I'm in my 13th year as the Veterans Service Director. So been there for a while. Not sure if everybody knows, I'm sure I've spoken to some of you before, but I used to do regular outreach here, kind of a quarterly outreach, but it's been a little while. The pandemic kind of threw a lot of that stuff off, but anybody that is a county, so let me back up a little second. State law requires that every county in the state of Wisconsin have a county veterans service office. So it's part of the state statute. And then anybody that is a county veteran service officer or an assistant county veteran service officer, by state law, you have to be a veteran as well. I always tell people that you don't have to be a veteran to have, to be able to be a veteran to have empathy and to help people, but sometimes it helps having some sort of similar connection and familiar connection to people. So, in our office, we're the largest office in the state in terms of the volume of claims and benefit applications that we put into the VA system. So we historically we had been 6 full-time staff members, but then in the past few years, through changes at the federal government and increased benefits, we went from 6 staff to 9 staff. So we have 9 full-time staff members, and we're still actually short-staffed compared to our counterparts throughout the state. If we were on par with our counterparts throughout the state, we should be at about 12 and a half staff members. That said, we're very grateful and thankful for what we have. We have a very important mission of serving our veterans and surviving spouses and eligible family members. Everybody in the office, as I said, all of us except for one person who's a clerical person, all of us are veterans. I served in the Army from 1988 to 1991. I was stationed in Korea after my initial training, and then from there I went to Fort Knox, and then from there went to the Gulf for 6 months. So I was in the Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and I got back from there at the end of the Gulf at the end of April of '91, and I got out that summer. So I kind of got back just in time to get out. The overwhelming majority of what we do is help veterans file service-connected disability claims. So if someone has an injury or illness related to their military service, we help to kind of gather all the evidence for the claim, dot the I's, cross the T's, and get a claim sent into the VA system. We are not the adjudicators, so we're not the ones deciding on whether or not someone should be approved. That happens at the federal VA level. But we're the ones, again, that dot those I's, cross the T's, set expectations, and try to navigate that process. If you've ever been through that process before, that it can be inherently bureaucratic and confusing. And so our role in a perfect world is to try to help simplify it a little bit and make it a little bit easier. I've worked with, and through outreach over here at the Oregon Senior Center, I've worked with a number of veterans over the years that, we've helped to file some different disability claims and have been successful. We work with veterans of all eras, so we still have some World War II veterans left, but it's very, very few. Then some Korea, and obviously more Vietnam era, and our current day veterans, but veterans of all eras. And so what I want to do is, and is there anybody here that served in country in Vietnam? Okay, so we have for sure 2. Anybody that served in Thailand during the Vietnam War, or was within 12 nautical miles of Vietnam? Yeah, like in the Navy or Coast Guard? Okay. So, as everybody's well aware, or I'm sure most people have probably heard of, Agent Orange is a very harmful substance that is related to mostly Vietnam. When people hear Agent Orange, most times people hear Vietnam or think of Vietnam. However, Agent Orange is not just Vietnam. Agent Orange was also used in Thailand, used in part of Korea, and used in Guam and some other areas. So if you served in Guam, potentially you may have been exposed to Agent Orange, or if you served in Korea during a certain window and you were along the DMZ, the demilitarized zone in Korea, then Agent Orange may have been used there during that window of time. So what I handed out to these gentlemen are list of conditions related to Agent Orange exposure. What about anybody serve at camp? Yes, ma'am.
Could I have one for my husband?
Absolutely, and if anybody else wants one, anybody knows a Vietnam veteran, or as a neighbor or family member, you're welcome to have one of these as well. But did anybody else here serve in the Marines at Camp Lejeune? When were you there?
From, let's see, 77 to 80.
Okay. So Camp Lejeune had contaminated water from 1951 to 1987. So if you were there during, or 53 to 87, during that window of time, you would have been presumptively exposed to contaminated water. So if you at any point, and hopefully not, but if you were to get diagnosed with any of the conditions on this list, you should be contacting our office and we would help you to file a claim with the VA.
Can I have one because our daughter's husband was there?
Okay.
And our daughter has some pretty serious illnesses now.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
And what this would be for is, for this particular thing, is if a veteran or a service member or a veteran served on Camp Lejeune during this window of time. However, you can also, there's also a separate thing that can happen if a family member was also there and they contract certain illnesses, they can get reimbursed for certain medical expenses. What about, so who served during Vietnam era? Vietnam era is largely recognized as 1964 to 1975, May of 75. So you guys are Vietnam era. What about, were some of you Korea or peacetime, kind of in between Korea and Vietnam?
It was in.
In Korea? Okay. When were you in Korea? 53 to 55? Okay. So one of the things, I'm kind of jumping all over here, but one of the things that happened in 2022, so 2022, the VA signed this massive piece of legislation was put into law called the PACT Act. And it's the promise to address certain toxins is essentially what it is. But what the PACT Act is it enhanced some of the Agent Orange related conditions. It also created, if anybody served in the from the Gulf War to present in one of these qualifying areas, it added burn pit presumptive conditions. So if someone was, so like me, I was over in the Gulf War, exposed to burn pits and burning oil fields and such. If I were to get one of these conditions, I could file a claim based on this burn pit exposure. They also, with a component within the PACT Act, is a thing called TARA. It's Toxic Exposure Risk Activity. So if someone had a job in service, even if they weren't in Vietnam, or they weren't exposed to the burn pits, or they weren't at Camp Lejeune, if someone had a job in the service that put them around toxic substances, and then they have some sort of disease or illness, they could file a claim with the VA. It's not as easy of a road to get that claim approved as it would be maybe with one of these presumptive conditions, but I'll give you an example. Let's say you were exposed to jet fuels, or solvents. Let's say you're a mechanic, and certain chemicals in those solvents or jet fuels, like benzene and some other chemicals, those are very, very harmful substances. If you contract a certain cancer or condition, respiratory condition, that may have potentially been caused by that, you could file a claim. Another example would be asbestos exposure. So if you were on a vessel, or if you were exposed to asbestos in certain ways, you could file a claim with the VA, and it would be processed under that thing called TARA, and they would at least give it consideration. Where many years ago, some of those claims, prior to the PACT Act, the VA would not necessarily, in some cases, wouldn't have even considered it. But now there's at least a mechanism within the law that allows them to look at that. Another thing we do within these claims that we file is, and these aren't presumptive conditions, but we file a lot of claims for hearing loss and ringing in ears. So if you had a job or in service that put you around loud noises and you have hearing loss, and maybe let's say you've had ringing in your ears ever since you were in the military, we could file a claim with the VA and you could potentially get a disability award from the VA. Now that technically would be independent from the healthcare, because raise your hand if you're enrolled in the VA healthcare system. So we got about half of us in this, or half in the system. Getting care through the VA is independent of a claim with the federal government. But they kind of sort of they have some intersection, but it's two separate processes. Even if you've been out for 50 years, if you were around, let's say you were a mortarman in the service, or you were a jet engine mechanic, and you were around loud noises, 50, 60 years later, you could still file a claim. If the VA grants the claim, it's not going to go back 50 to 60 years, but we can at least potentially get it approved now. And then what that would allow us to do it not only could potentially result in some disability compensation from the VA, but it could also allow you to get into the VA healthcare system, and maybe in the past you would not have been eligible. I'm looking at this group here. You're the veteran, and then this is the daughter, wife. Okay. So there's another benefit, and there's a lot of stuff here, and I'm going to be staying after if you want to talk to me individually, but feel free to ask questions. But when did you serve, sir? I'll use you as an example.
1955 to 1959.
Okay.
In the regular Air Force.
Okay.
And then in the Wisconsin Air National Guard for 5 years.
Okay. Did you have any activations in the Guard other than training?
Just the normal weekends and stuff like that.
Okay. When in 55 did you go in?
Beg your pardon?
When in 55 did you start?
March, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere in that.
So a lot of benefits, and this is a segue to this. There are a lot of benefits that there isn't always a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's where we can come in because we can help to navigate these things. But there's a needs-based benefit called VA pension, and it's kind of also an enhancer called pension with aid and attendance. So if you have for example, if you have a veteran who served in the military, depending on when they served, if that veteran now needs help with expenses related to like an assisted living facility or a nursing home, there could potentially be some assistance there. The caveat to that is VA pension requires at least 90 days of active duty, which most people are going to have. 1 day has to be during a period of war. So for VA purposes, and you would not have to be in a combat theater, it just has to be during a period of war. But Korea ended January 31st, 1955, and then Vietnam, generally speaking, didn't start for VA purposes, for pension purposes, until August 4th of 1964, or August 5th of 64. So there's a 9-year gap in between that is considered peacetime for this pension benefit purpose. But if you serve during a period of war, and let's say you are going to go into an assisted living facility, or you need help with activities of daily living, and you're looking at and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do from long-term care standpoint, depending on this benefit is based on need. It's based on medical need and based on financial need, but there could be some assistance from the VA. So for example, if a veteran let's say they served in 1966 to 68, and that veteran now needs help with activities of daily living, if that veteran's assets are below a certain amount, and if their medical expenses are more than their countable income. So if you're going to assisted living, let's say conservatively, you could be paying $6,000 a month. or $5,000, at least $5,000 a month for assisted living. And if that $5,000 is more than your monthly income, the VA could pay this benefit, and it's a little over $2,000 a month that the VA could pay. That's a needs-based benefit. That's a pension benefit. The compensation side, when I talked about disability claims, that's not needs-based. That's a different element. Now, if you're a surviving spouse of a wartime veteran and the surviving spouse needs help with activities of daily living, the surviving spouse could get that benefit as well. It's a lesser amount though. For example, if there's a surviving spouse of a wartime veteran that's in an assisted living facility and that surviving spouse is paying for that and it's expensive, the most that surviving spouse could get current dollars is $1,515 a month, which is better than nothing, of course. It doesn't pay for the facility, but it helps to, make it a little bit palatable.
I was in the Vietnam era. I signed up in '75. I was on the delayed entry program, and they told me that I was in on the Vietnam era, but I didn't go in until '76, which was, I think, Vietnam era was over. So would I still be included in that, or even though I was
Unfortunately not. Vietnam ended, for VA purposes, when it comes to the wartime period, Vietnam ended May 7th, 1975, and that counts when you were on active duty. And what's kind of stinks about that is we all know that anybody that did the delayed entry program, you signed on the dotted line, and you're in effective whatever date in '75, and you didn't go in until '76.
Right.
But if the poo would have hit the fan in between, they could have said, we're yanking you out of high school or whatever it was and you're going in. But that doesn't count from an active duty standpoint because, so from a technical standpoint for this benefit, the needs-based benefit that I'm talking about, that would not be applicable. But again, that's why there isn't a one-size-fits-all in terms of every benefit has its own set of qualifications. So, there's, again, the most common thing we do is the VA disability claims. Second most would be this needs-based pension benefit. And then there's everything else in between, ancillary benefits such as VA healthcare, education benefits, burial markers, VA home loan program. There's a lot of other things, but the driving force for any of the offices like mine that are out there is the disability claim process. So again, if what we're doing is the disability claim process is fundamentally a very simplistic process. You have to have a clinical diagnosis of a chronic condition that began during your military service. So the three elements are basic: clinical diagnosis, chronic condition, and a connection to your service. Being able to establish the connection is often the hardest part. But let's say while you're in, we'll use, what's your first name?
Leon.
Leon. Let's say, Leon, we'll use you for an example. Let's say while you were in, you broke your leg, and you went to, you got treated for your leg, and now you have arthritic changes related to that broken leg. Even that many years later, 60 plus years later, you could file a claim for that broken leg. And it would be the residuals of a broken leg to arthritic changes. Or let's say when you're in, and again, it doesn't have to be the government's fault. It just has to be something that happened on Uncle Sam's dime. Let's say while you were in, someone got diagnosed with having high blood pressure during your military services. When they diagnosed you, you could file a claim with the VA as long as the connection can be made back to the military service. The best evidence is the more smoking gun evidence is the service treatment records that show that the condition began during the military, right? Now the problem with some of the individuals here is you may have heard in 1973 there was a fire in St. Louis. So the National Personnel Records Center had a huge fire in 1973. an estimated 16 to 18 million service records were destroyed. So if Leon had that smoking gun evidence of a broken leg in service, but if those records, poof, vanished in that fire, being able to prove that it happened would be hard. So whenever a claim is granted, that means every time, 100% of the time when the VA grants a disability claim, they've been able to establish a clinical diagnosis, chronic condition, and a connection to service. If something isn't granted, that means one of these three elements is missing. And again, we're here, our office, we help people to try to kind of build the case. But the further someone is removed from service, it doesn't make it impossible, but you can imagine if you have not only several years, but in some cases several decades in between, it can be harder to establish that. But it's not impossible. It just, you know, we very, very much believe in the philosophy of the worst that's going to happen if we file it is the VA will say no. But if we temper our expectations, we file it in, and we know that, hey, let's just see what happens, that's good, because those can come back favorably. But at the same time, we really want to set expectations. I don't want to make it sound like it's like easy every single time, because it's not. Now, the presumptive list that I gave regarding the VA, when I was talking about the Agent Orange stuff, Agent Orange, there's a whole slew of medical conditions related to Agent Orange. Type 2 diabetes, prostate cancer, coronary artery disease, B-cell leukemia, Parkinson's disease, prostate cancer, lung cancer. These are all related to Agent Orange exposure. So if a Vietnam veteran walks into the office today, or one of you here tells me, I just got diagnosed with coronary artery disease and I'm having triple bypass surgery next month, even 50 plus years later, we can file that claim and the VA will grant that benefit. Again, it does not have to be the military, it does not have to be something that happened during the military when it comes to one of these presumptive conditions. If your records show that you served in Vietnam or one of the other exposure areas, the VA presumes you were exposed. You don't have to prove your exposure as long as your records show that. So Parkinson's disease, for example, Parkinsonism, there's just a whole bunch of conditions on here. Did everybody serve on active duty that served? Everybody was that? You were active duty? Okay. There's one condition that is presumptive to all eras of service, no matter when you served. What I mean by presumptive, if you served at least 90 days of active duty in the military that wasn't just training, it was you were on regular active duty for at least 90 days, and you were to get diagnosed with ALS. ALS, otherwise known or formerly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. ALS was granted on September 23rd, 2008. The Secretary of the VA made ALS a presumptive condition. No matter when you served, World War II all the way to present day, peacetime, stateside, doesn't matter where you served, at least 90 days of active duty, and you were to get diagnosed with the ALS, the VA will grant that service connection. Or if you know Jimmy Smith down the way passed away from ALS and he was in the military and his widow is still alive, she could file for a survivor's claim related to ALS. That is the only condition that is presumptive no matter when you served, and that would be something. So all of these things, you know, if you know of anybody, any other veterans, Vietnam veterans, or anybody that is served and they have never connected with our office, and as well as all of you here, connect with our office, because we can at least talk about your specific circumstances and determine if there's anything that you're eligible for. We have people all the time there are thousands and thousands of people, and I can guarantee someone in this room that we could help that is unaware of certain things that we can end up helping you get some benefits from the VA. I'll give you an example. I had a surviving spouse that I just filed a claim for about 4 months ago, and about 2 months after that, the claim got approved. this surviving spouse got a retroactive award of $355,000
Oh my
from the VA. That's a little bit of an exception. But what happened is her husband died in 1998, and he was a Vietnam veteran, died in 1998 from a condition that was not presumptive then. It was not on the Agent Orange list. She filed in 2001 a survivor's claim, but when she filed it, it was denied because there wasn't a mechanism of granting it. We got a hold of her a few months ago, we filed a claim, and because she had previously denied, there's a special provision, this is kind of an exception, it allowed them to go back to 2001. So I got to call her and I asked her if she heard the results, and she said no, she hadn't, and I told her. She was very surprised, of course, you know. VA healthcare is, who's enrolled in healthcare at the VA? So we got a handful of people, okay. Do you go to where do you do your primary care? Anybody go to the East Clinic? Okay, that's great, isn't it? That place is really nice. I just recently set up my primary care over there, but I don't know where everybody lives, if everybody's in Oregon, if you're not at the East Clinic and you're at the West Clinic, I don't know, I don't know about you guys, but I endorse, the East Clinic is really, really nice. They have their stuff wired tight.
Where is the?
It's over by American Parkway, kind of,
Way over there.
yeah.
Sunford,
Yeah.
kinda.
But I think they're really fast. You know, you sit down you're waiting for your appointment in the lobby, and I don't know if I've had to wait more than like 3 to 5 minutes, and they pull you back, and they're really pretty fast.
They're
And I'm not-
better than any doctors I've been to
Yeah.
anywhere. They
Yeah.
are great.
Yep, and I'm just speaking from my own experiences there. I mean, when I got out of the Army, I got out in '91, and while I was going to college, first 4 or 5 years, I just went to the VA because I was just working part-time while I was going to college, and I used the VA healthcare system. But then I eventually was working and had regular insurance, but I still had my insurance through the county, but I also set up primary care at the VA. Because which kind of segues here, VA healthcare is not something that every veteran is eligible for. There's a misconception when it comes to VA healthcare that it's kind of a false assumption that anybody that served in the military is eligible for VA healthcare. Well, the reason I was eligible after all those years is because I had enrolled shortly after I got out, and my enrollment was maintained. But after January 16th, 2003, any new enrollee into the VA healthcare system, your enrollment is subject to income, unless you have a special qualifier to get in. So what I mean by that is if your income is over a certain threshold, you might be put in the system, but you may not be able to receive care because your income is too high. And if you're married, they look at the household income. There are special exceptions. The exception would be a newly returning combat veteran if you do it within a certain window of time, or if you're an Agent Orange exposure veteran, or you're a Camp Lejeune exposure veteran, if you're a Purple Heart recipient, or if you have service-connected disabilities. Those are all exceptions to be in the system regardless of your income. However, though, if you do not have one of those exceptions and you're enrolling, your income has to fall below the threshold. And it's based on your zip code and all that, but I can figure out those numbers if you want. But and again, the moral of this is that not every benefit is there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, as I mentioned before. So the devil is in the details with almost every benefit that we're referring to, or that I'm referring to. And it would behoove you to kind of connect with our office directly or ask me some questions afterwards. But for those, and I don't expect people to share, but if someone is receiving disability compensation from the VA and they have a VA disability rating of 30% or more, there's a state benefit at the state of Wisconsin called the Wisconsin GI Bill. Not to be confused with the federal GI Bill, but it's the Wisconsin GI Bill, where what would allow your dependent children and I'm guessing maybe there aren't any of those situations right now, but if you have young children, they could use the Wisconsin GI Bill, which is a waiver of tuition and fees for UW system schools and Wisconsin Technical College system schools. The veteran, any of us here that served, if our records, if we served in the military and we had qualifying active duty, we could use the Wisconsin GI Bill ourselves, even all these years later. So if anybody has a hankering to take some classes at METC, I had a guy one time, he's deceased now, but he was a World War II veteran that took classes at UW just so he could access the facilities down there for working out and swimming and everything. I've had veterans that retire and they take woodworking classes at METC. You can get your tuition waived under the Wisconsin GI Bill. If anybody here has a VA disability rating of 70% or more, this is a big one, 70% or more, and you eventually require skilled nursing. So you're medically, at this point, or you're in the future, you require skilled nursing. If you have a disability rating of 70% or more, as long as it's a VA contracted nursing home, so a nursing home under contract with the VA will pay for the nursing home, and you get to keep your compensation from the VA. It's unlike, someone else that maybe there isn't a military connection, in the private sector, or excuse me, in the civilian world, non-military, if someone wants the nursing home to be paid for, they pretty much have to go on Medicaid, where they have to spend down all of their assets and they go on Medicaid. Right. But if you're if your sister instead, let's say this gentleman's sister, let's say she was a veteran and she had a VA rating of 70% or more, the VA would, and as long as it's a VA contracted nursing home, it doesn't have to be like King or one of the veterans homes, it just has to be a nursing home that is working with the VA. The VA will pay for it and that individual gets to retain their compensation. So that's a big thing, that we'll, talk about. And even if you're not at 70 right now, if you have a disability rating, connect with our office. We can look to see maybe there's a way we can get your claim increased or bumped up. Yes?
Are the VA benefits continuing with the shutdown? Do you know?
Yes. So VA benefits are continuing. So if anybody is receiving benefits with the VA, that there's been nothing that is indicating that any benefits will be disrupted as far as the monthly payments. In fact, they put out information that the benefits will continue. Even the healthcare, the appointments at the VA, those are continuing. Now, there are certain things that are not happening. For example, if you ever come here, there's a person that comes from the Vet Center, which is a counseling place. John Howell might come here sometime and talk to people. Some of those things they're not able to do outreach and stuff like that right now during the shutdown. But the reason we're not impacted by that is because we work for Dane County. So we don't have anybody saying we can't do this. Our job is still continuing. So we may see potentially, who knows how long it's going to be. Hopefully it's just a few more days. But theoretically, it could slow down some of the processing of claims that we work with. But at this point, they're still processing claims. They're considered essential for VA purposes. So virtually, other than getting a few questions about the shutdown, we have not seen any direct impact on our end. So let's say, again, we have someone here. When did you serve again, sir? Okay. Active duty? Okay. So you were, Korea for VA purposes was 1950 to January 31st of 55. I forget the exact starting date. I have most of them memorized, but of 50. But so you were 53 to 55. If you got to a point where you needed help with activities of daily living, so feeding yourself, toileting, showering, those kinds of things, and if your assets were low enough, and you either had someone coming into the home that you had to pay, or you were going into a facility, there could be some financial help from the VA. And even if your income is too high or your assets are too high right now, and for this needs-based benefit later on, you spend down, you may qualify later. When did you serve back here, sir? Yeah, you.
66 to 69.
Okay, gotcha. And I made a false assumption. It could have been you that served, so I apologize. Any female veterans in here? You served as well? Where did you serve?
Desert Storm,
Okay.
but I was sent to Germany.
Oh, you went to Germany. Okay. What was your job?
Nurse.
Nurse. Okay.
Nurse.
All right. So you got activated, or were you regular active duty?
I was reservist.
And you got active title, a federal activation. You went to Germany
Yes.
because in anticipation of
Yeah,
when we-
January to May.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So an example, we work with veterans of all eras. We work with all branches. We work with people that served in the National Guard or the reserves. In the past 20 plus years, since basically from 9/11 to now, there were a lot of Guard and reservists that got activated multiple times. That was almost, you can make an argument that was more disruptive than if those individuals would have just gone on regular active duty to start with. Because then they're in and out of college, into this, and so it's crazy to think that that's how long it's been. But I started in the office in May of '06, and in May of '06, it was still really, really active. We were getting a lot of people returning from deployments and everything, and that part has slowed down in terms of new veterans coming directly out of combat theaters. But again, because of that PACT Act being signed into law in August of 2022, that brought a new wave of benefit opportunities because of largely due to the burn pit and the toxic exposure claims. When did you serve?
78, 81.
Okay. Is that what, Army?
Maybe.
Navy, okay. Depending on what vessel, if you served on a vessel, some of those vessels still had asbestos, of course. There's asbestos in, insulation wrapped around pipes, asbestos in brake pads, asbestos in, tiles, yep, yeah, all kinds of stuff. And the latency period, for asbestos exposure can be, so asbestos, you can either breathe it or you can swallow it. They're like they've described them, or been described as like little fish hooks, that get through your respiratory system or your digestive system, and it may not present itself for decades later. So whether it's asbestosis or pleural plaquing or other condition, mesothelioma, excuse me. So if you served and you were potentially exposed to asbestos and you were to get diagnosed with a condition, technically they say, there aren't any true presumptives related to asbestos exposure, but if you had a job that put you around the plausibility of, or a possibility of being exposed to asbestos was there, and you then subsequently get diagnosed with an asbestos related condition, that's when we can try to make those connections. Yep, foam. So the PFAS, the foam, firefighting foam, that's another thing. I think there will probably eventually be presumptive conditions related to that, but everything is on the table now with that TERRA thing. So again, toxic exposure risk activity. If you had a job during service that put you around chemicals and other harmful substances, now we can at least gives you kind of, what do they say, like a puncher's chance for a claim, right? Someone that maybe they're not a real great puncher, but they have one heck of a hit if they can do it. So TERRA gives us a chance for some of those claims that, whereas in the past they would not really have given us that chance. Did you serve as well?
Yeah.
You were in Vietnam? What about you?
Vietnam.
Both? Oh, I'm sorry.
He was.
You were in Vietnam?
He's 100%er.
Okay. So, do you mind me talking? So the property tax credit, if you're 100% service connected by the VA, there's a property tax credit benefit that if you own your home, you would get essentially get a refund through the Department of Revenue. So good. I'm glad you're getting that. I'm not glad that you're 100%, but it's good that you're getting the benefit that you deserve. And then, are you married? You passed? Okay. So if you're service connected by the VA and you have a condition that leads to your demise, and there's a surviving spouse, or in some cases, surviving minor children, then those survivors can make a claim with the VA as well. So for example, through the PACT Act on August 10th of 2022, when they added a couple new conditions to the Agent Orange list, they added hypertension. So high blood pressure is now one of the conditions related to Agent Orange. High blood pressure can cause a whole host of other issues. So you can have some certain heart issues. It can even cause dementia, strokes. So if a veteran who served in Vietnam or was otherwise exposed to Agent Orange dies as a result of hypertension, for example, and that's on that person's death certificate, and there's a surviving spouse, that surviving spouse can file a survivor's claim. Are you guys married back there?
No, sister and brother.
Okay, well that'd be weird then. But let's pretend she's your spouse for a second, and you were at Camp Lejeune, and you were to get diagnosed with one of those conditions. I mean, I don't know if you're married or not, but if you have one of those conditions, if that led to your demise, and I don't even like to use those examples because I don't want to throw anything in the universe, but let's say a fictitious Camp Lejeune veteran dies as a result of one of those conditions, that surviving spouse can file a claim with the VA. There are so many different possibilities and so many different variables and nuances to all of this. The big thing is contact if you're in Dane County, contact our office. If you're outside of Dane County, anybody outside of Dane County? Or is that, where are you at?
Rock.
Okay, so Rock County Veteran Service Office, they do the exact same thing we do. Where are you at? Greene County, okay. Greene County, you know Clayton there, he's a Marine vet. The other offices do the same thing, but basically what I'm trying to get at is go to the office or call them and discuss your specific situation, and don't assume that you're not eligible. That's the thing that a lot of us do, is we just assume we're not eligible. Have those conversations with people, and then it's better to talk about it with someone that is in that world and does that stuff every day than to assume you're not eligible. I can tell you unequivocally that people just unknowingly leave benefit money and benefit perks on the table just without knowing. Yes?
I have a couple of examples to share. Our daughter never was in the active duty. She was active duty but not served at war.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a grenade blow up very near her and lost hearing.
Yep.
And now she's 70% hearing loss, so 70%
For hearing loss.
considered
Yep.
disabled.
Yep.
And her husband served in Desert Storm and that era.
Okay, Somalia or something.
I can't remember, but anyway, he was
Yeah.
in 22 years.
Okay.
And he's, with our daughter, she went from 50% to 70%. And then her husband is, I think, 50% from an injury. He
Okay.
doesn't talk about it at all, so I
Sure.
don't know exactly what it was. But the VA's been very good to them, and he's been in the hospital a couple times at the VA, and we can't praise the VA here in Madison enough. And every time I talk to somebody who's young and in any kind of a medical field that they're gonna go, I always tell them to go to the VA to work, because the people at the VA, their attitude is, it is absolutely our pleasure to be able to serve the veterans.
Yeah.
It's just,
I agree. I mean, that's been my experience as well over the years. The VA it's been real positive. Obviously, like any government, any entity, there's always room for improvement. But I think specifically here to Madison's really, they've gone a long way to try to build a positive culture, and and to try to treat people with dignity and respect. You hear horror stories about some of the other areas and places, but
well, they just recently moved to McGonigle, which is near Milwaukee, and they drive from McGonigle back here. They said they will never go to Milwaukee. They come back
yeah,
here.
the difference in
Because it's just,
yeah, and it certainly you shouldn't have such wide range of how you get treated. But yeah, I know we're blessed here in Madison. I feel it, and we get a little bit of that ourselves, because our office, generally speaking, I'm a little biased, of course, but I've been there a long time, but we have a really good reputation. We're the largest office in the state. My philosophy is always putting a really strong emphasis on customer service. That said, we can't fabricate, if there isn't the evidence there to support a claim, we can only work within the confines of the system. But a person should never feel as though they weren't heard or they weren't treated respectfully. And so that's my philosophy as the director, and my people share that same philosophy as well. But again, it's always important. You know, I never like to hear if someone, you know, was treated poorly. If a person walks away from our office unhappy because of the results of their claim, because maybe the evidence wasn't there to support it, I can live with that if we tried everything we could. But if they're unhappy with how we treated them, that's unacceptable to me. So hopefully, if anybody's worked with our office, if you've ever had that experience, please reach out to me, because I want to know about that. But
You said you use the West Clinic.
the East Clinic, yeah.
I use the West Clinic.
Yeah, the West Clinic.
And I couldn't be happier.
You like, okay, yeah.
In fact, I was in the hospital for pneumonia last year, and I was in there for a few days, and I accused the nurses of taking happy pills.
Because they're all so happy, and that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think I interact on a regular basis with people over there, because we do a lot of, so I interact mostly with a lot of the social workers who have their patients, and then that person is also a mutual client. So we do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, trying to help make sure we get people benefits that they've earned. There's also through the VA, that's newer in the past, well, it's a new-ish thing, is a caregiver support benefit through the VA. Social work at the VA hospital, if you contact the social work office, they can talk to you about different benefits that may be available. The big thing is, you know, leave no stone unturned. Try to tap into benefits that may or may not be there, because people do that all the time. The example she was saying here is, you mentioned her daughter, who's a VA rating, and her son-in-law. When you have a VA rating of 50% or more through the VA, then you have no co-payments at the hospital, or no co-payments through the healthcare system. At 50 and 70%, you're not eligible, generally speaking, you're not eligible for dental care. But if you're at 100% service connected, then you can also get dental care through the VA. They may farm you out into the community for some of the stuff. It's like authorized, you know, community care, but it would be something that would be paid for by the VA. If you're enrolled in the VA healthcare system and you're not service connected, or if you're enrolled and you're service connected at less than 50%, you might either have to pay your pharmacy co-payments for medications, or some outpatient co-payments. Like a primary care doctor's visit, for example, is $15, or a specialty care visit is $50. Generally speaking, though, again, it's all case by case. It's all specific to that individual, and there's not that one size fits all.
Are there any changes to the medical advantage plans as far as the best hospital billing the medical advantage plan?
We still keep health insurance on him because we travel.
Yeah.
And so if we're out of VA range, so we have the Medicare.
So the question was, are there any changes to the medical, like the Medicare Advantage plan, or just
Yes,
like a supplemental plan?
Yeah.
I don't know the nuances to all that, but what I can tell you is this: if you're enrolled in the VA healthcare system and you're being seen at the VA, but you also have private insurance, and you're being seen for a condition that is not related to your military service, the VA will actually bill your private insurance company. Whatever they don't pay, the VA will pay for, with the exception of if you're on a copay status, then you might pay a small portion. So
They won't, if you're medical advantage, they won't bill United Healthcare.
So that on the medical advantage, okay. But if you had maybe it wasn't, okay, so that might be an exception. So UHC or United Healthcare has certain, I don't know, you'd have to talk to the patient billing office at the VA on that, because I don't know that. But again, there's so many different nuances. But normally, if you're enrolled and you just have regular health insurance and you're also in the VA, they may bill your private insurance. The VA itself is not technically, if you get care at the VA, it's not technically health insurance, it's just medical coverage by the VA. And it's semantics, right? But it's not like a health insurance. You don't just have, if you're enrolled in the VA system, you can't say, well, I don't want to go to the hospital here, I'm going to walk over to UW, or I'm going to walk over to Meriter, and I'm going to make the VA pay for it. Well, you don't really have that luxury. Now, if it's an emergency and they send you over to there, then the VA may pay for it. But you can't just sort of haphazardly go where you want and expect the VA to pay for it. There are a lot of people, a lot of our veterans that only have the VA, that don't even have private health insurance, and that works for them. There are a lot of veterans that are dually enrolled, where you have your private insurance plus you have the VA. That would be me, for example. I have the VA plus I have my insurance through SSM Health. Some people, and I don't necessarily recommend this, but some people, when they come time to elect Medicare, some people have described where they can opt out of Medicare, paying the Medicare premium. My philosophy with that is, because we get this question a lot, should I get rid of my supplemental insurance? Should I get rid of this, that? I always tell people that is such a special decision. You really want, my philosophy is that it's better to be overcovered than undercovered, because the last thing you want to do is get rid of this or get rid of that and then get seen in the private sector, and you could go bankrupt if the VA says we're not going to cover that bill. So I personally, our office will never tell you to drop your private coverage, or never tell you to drop your drop Medicare or get rid of don't know what for Medicare. We would never ever do that. If anybody ever said that, or said that, I know that it's not true, because I make sure our people don't do that. So yeah, like I said, there's so many different layers to all of this that it's best to give us a call. One thing with us is we're very busy. Our office, we book out about 6 to 8 weeks for appointments. It really is that busy. Our goal is, if you call our office and you have to leave a message, which is probably most times you're gonna have to leave a message. Our goal is to call back. We usually call back the same day or the very next day, but if you leave a message, we will call you back. One of the common things that we encounter is people say, I keep on trying to call your office and nobody ever gets back to me. And sometimes they'll say, well, did you leave a message? And they say, well, no, I don't like to leave messages. I'm like, well, let's say the name's Bob. I say, Bob, that doesn't count then, because we're not going to look at our missed call log. We have such a volume. But if you leave a message, you will get a call back. The other problem we have sometimes is the person doesn't have their voicemail set up on their phone, or they don't check their messages. And so there's a constant, kind of thing there. What we did coming out of the pandemic, we created a thing called Walk-In Wednesdays. So every Wednesday at our office between 9 and 4, we have walk-in hours. Now you can technically walk in any other day as well, during the week, right? You can come in any day. But on Wednesdays, we have dedicated time that we set aside that we're making sure people are available. So if you come in on a Wednesday and you have some questions, you will be seen that day and we'll talk to you. Now, we may have to set an appointment depending on what you're inquiring about, right? We might have to set an appointment, but we will be able to talk to you and have that time for you, get you in our system or update some stuff. Because sometimes it's just a few questions that people have, and it's not going to take anything. You don't need to wait 8 weeks for something that you could get answered in 5 minutes. But it's all it is it's us managing the workload. You're juggling all the balls, and it's between the emails and the phone calls and the walk-ins and the appointments. So we try to do everything we can, but it's a volume issue. And when you do have an appointment, though, let's say it is 6 weeks out, you make an appointment, you have that dedicated at least an hour with one of us, if not more, if extra time is needed. So on those brochures, there's, other stuff that's in there as well. I kind of touched on the main highlights, the big ones. One of the things is sort of more of a basic benefit, but is everybody familiar with the vet identifier on your driver's license? So on your Wisconsin driver's license, above the word Wisconsin, you can get, if you have a qualifying period of service, you can get veteran put on there. So using the lady back here, without your activation, it wouldn't have worked. But if you had a federal activation, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, that window, you would qualify based on that activation. Other people, even if, it doesn't matter if it's peacetime or wartime, you could get that put on your driver's license if you want. There's a form that we sign off on. There's a couple different ways to go about this, but basically, you ultimately have to end up over at the Department of Motor Vehicles. But there's a form that our office or the other office in Rock County or Greene County could sign off on.
The other benefit with that is you can also get a National Parks Pass as a veteran.
That's right.
And you can enter any national park for free.
Yep, you can, thank you for saying that. For the federal, it's called, well, there's two different, but there's a veteran-specific park pass that's a lifetime benefit you can get for free if you're served in the military. Or if you have a disability rating, it doesn't even have to be the VA. It could be a VA, it could be a Social Security disability or a VA disability rating. You can get a thing called an access pass for the national parks, and it basically kind of does the same thing. So there's a lot of little things that kind of dovetail off of that.
Is that different than the one you can apply for just by the fact of being you're old?
Is that a lifetime one? If
Yeah, when you pay, we bought one that's like $27 or whatever, and you get it for any national park.
Yeah, it's because, well, the one for being a veteran or the one for being a disabled veteran, those are free. The nuance to that is if you get it through the mail, it costs $10 for processing. But if you're at a place at a national park and they do it there, you get the pass for free. You just have to show your military. So the other advantage to having the vet identifier on your driver's license is if you're a place that has a military discount. You don't have to carry your DD-214 around that has your social security number on it when you can just show your driver's license, right? Yep, hotels, their Home Depot, and a lot of places.
AT&T will give a veteran
Yep.
a discount.
AT&T's a pretty healthy discount.
Yeah.
Does your license then qualify for that state park pass? Will that work for that, or do you have that separate?
So the state park pass is different than the federal. So what we were talking about before is the federal. The state park pass, there's a couple different ways to qualify for that. You have to be, in order to get that free, you have to have a VA disability rating of 70% or more. Or if you have a VA rating of 50 or more, you can buy a state park pass, a small game license, and a fishing license. If let's say you're 50% service guy, you get small game, state park pass, and a fishing license for $7 a year for those three things. Another thing, just kind of shooting off the cuff here, is there is a pre-registration. There are 3 state veteran cemeteries in the state of Wisconsin. Union Grove, down by Racine. Spooner, way up in the southeast, Union Grove. In the middle of the state, in King or Wapaka area, is King, and then in the northeast is Spooner. So all the way through there. Those are the 3 state veteran cemeteries. You don't have to pre-register, but there's a pre-registration option that you can do for one of those, and it basically holds your slot.
Is it a high ground recruitment?
The high ground is not technically, has anybody been to the high ground, by the way? It's really incredible. Yeah. Yeah, in Neilsville area, yeah. It's not technically a state veteran cemetery, but I don't know how the registration is there, but they also, a few years ago, up by Rhinelander, there's a federal VA cemetery. Because the only official, federal VA cemetery besides that was Milwaukee at Wood, right by the VA grounds there, and County Stadium, Miller Park, whatever we're calling it these days, American Family Field. There's a cemetery there, but there's a federal cemetery up by Rhinelander area. that you can go as well. Arlington, well, right, Arlington out in DC, there's certain requirements. Not everybody's eligible for that, for Arlington, but there are, yes, sir.
In a nutshell, is there all these VA benefits, is there any of these that are spousal, that will go transfer to the spouse, a non-military spouse? Or is that all dependent on only a disabled American veteran and at a certain level?
It kind of, in general, it's sort of, so if a veteran has a VA disability or a condition that should be related on, that's on their list, and they die as a result of that disability, then that surviving spouse is eligible for a benefit. Or if using you serve 66 to 67-ish, something
It's,
like 8?
3 years, 8 months, and 24 days.
Okay, 3 years, 8 months, 24 days.
So how many days? 214.
So, you're Vietnam era veteran, and so that needs-based pension with aid and attendance benefit is applicable if you ever got that need. Then if you pass away and your spouse, is this your spouse here? If you needed that benefit, if you needed help with activities of daily living, then it's called survivor's pension with aid and attendance. And that is a benefit, but it's all based on that moment in time and situational, but that could be something, and that's the benefit that currently the maximum is paid for the surviving spouse is $15.15 per month.
Second question is, going through this death and memorial benefit thing, is that like survivor's pension? I think you've touched on that already.
Yeah.
The burial and plot allowance, is that automatic? Do we have to apply for that? Does it just happen?
So the burial and plot allowance is not something that everybody is eligible for. This is the kind of goofiness of the VA. There isn't a one size fits all. But if a veteran is in receipt of a veteran's in receipt of disability compensation at the time of their passing, or VA pension at the time of passing, or if they die in a VA contracted facility, then there's a modest burial / plot allowance that could be paid out. Or if they die as a result of, so using that Vietnam, let's say Vietnam veteran passes away as a result of their service-connected condition, the VA would pay a service-connected plot allowance benefit to the family member or person that paid for that. It's not a lot of money, it's $2,000 on a service-connected.
Okay. But isn't there, I thought, like there's a burial allowance, is that from the federal then?
From the federal, there isn't one that's for everybody though, it's specific.
Oh, even the federal is not for everybody. I thought just by being a veteran, they gave you $200-300 for one
No.
guy.
What you're probably talking about is I think it's still $255. It's it's through Social Security.
Okay,
It's a death benefit that I believe is automatically paid when that, but I'm not. That's on Social
so
Security.
that's Social Security benefit.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's been $255 for decades and decades. It was probably back in the time when it was created. Maybe that's how much it actually costs to bury someone. But if you've buried someone in recent years, it is not anywhere close to
We got a quote of
$250.
$16,000.
Yeah.
Right,
16
right.
is about right.
Yep.
What about the next one, the burial marker?
Can I ask just one before you do that? Is there any benefits for cremation? Or is it all
It
burial?
would kind of be part of that burial
Okay.
allowance, right?
Thank you.
So you're talking about, so the next one he's talking about on this list is the burial marker or headstone. Anybody that served, we're all eligible for that. It's nothing you can do ahead of time. It's only something you can do after you pass. Your family would do that. But it's basically, let's say you have a family plot at a cemetery near here. Let's say you're gonna be buried here in Oregon. You can order the government furnished headstone or marker, and that marker is provided at no cost. However, if, let's say it has to be affixed to a slab in the ground, the cost of that slab and attaching it is not something the federal VA would pay for, but the marker itself they would provide.
That's that brass marker that.
Yeah, there's a few different types. There's upright granite, upright marble, flat granite, flat marble, the bronze niche, which is a smaller one, and the bronze. So there's a handful of options that exist, yeah. And also, through the state of Wisconsin, actually through Union Grove in Racine area, is the Military Funeral Honors Service. So we've all probably been to military or funeral events where they do a military honors, right? And a lot of times you'll see a combination of, sometimes you'll see guys from the local VFW or American Legion there, but you'll also see one or two people, sometimes three people in military uniform. It's a combination where they have people that are they're active duty orders to work these funerals. So they get someone, if it's the Navy, they'll get people from the Navy. If it's the Army, they'll get some Army guys. And they'll basically coordinate that military funeral honors. They send the VA, the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs in Union Grove will send the detail to that location, wherever it is, and they'll do the funeral honors. That's when they'll present the flag as well to the next of kin.
Our VFW post here,
Yeah,
we do military services for any veteran that wants them, and we do about 3 a month.
yeah, oh yeah. Yep, and then what they do is they'll get a little stipend back from the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs to help pay for part of that. At least if they claim that. So there's, like I said, there are a lot of little nuances. Some of these things are more things that we do more readily, as I touched on, the disability claims and the pension benefit. But hopefully at the very minimum, you give our office a call, or give Greene County a call, give Rock County a call, or just call us. Just call us. Our thing is we are statutorily required to exist, and in the statute we serve people residing in our county. At the same time, we have some exceptions to that. If you're still working, let's say, and you live in Greene, but you work in Madison and you're here 40+ hours a week, we're going to see you because it makes sense, right? But if you just want to come to us because you don't like the person in the other county, we're going to say, well, we encourage you to kind of maybe see someone else within the office, or we try to get you to establish that relationship. Because, as I said, we're booked 6 to 8 weeks out, sometimes longer, and we have to try to manage the workload. I'm going to be, keep on asking questions if you have a question.
Moving down your list, you have
Yes.
this government life insurance. Is that attuned to the policies you can buy now for death insurance, basically? So it prepays you $16,000 funeral expense that you kind of prepaid it, which actually turns into a life insurance policy.
It's a little different than that. I mean, the VA Life is the newest. So there used to be, when we were in, we had a thing called SGLI, which is Service Group Life Insurance.
Yep.
If you got out, or when you got out, you had the option, most people did not choose this, but you had an option of converting it to a thing called VGLI, which is Veterans Group Life Insurance. And these are different variations. And then if you're a service-connected veteran, if you have a VA disability rating, you have the option of picking up a service-disabled veterans insurance through the VA. Or a few years ago, they added VA Life. Now, there's certain VA Life variables. Not every veteran, you have to have a disability rating, though. It's not every veteran is eligible for VA Life. But it's a premium-based benefit. It's really I don't want to bash it, but it's a whole life policy that the amount that it costs compared to what you get it's not as advantageous as the term policy. But in a lot of cases, a lot of our veterans, unfortunately, we're not eligible. We're not going to get a term policy that's going to be a couple $1 million unless we pay, a ton for the insurance or for the premiums. So it's an option at least that, yeah. But I'd have to look at some of the details on that specifically. But my plan is to stick around for as long as if you have questions. My son goes to Oregon High School, and I have to pick him up at 3:50, and we have to be home. And we have to be home by 4:05, so we can. Yep. Get on the couch and turn the TV on before the first pitch of the Brewer game. But I'm from Madison originally, but then in 2000. 7, we moved to Oregon. And then my boys went to Oregon High School, and just, I guess, full transparency, my oldest son in 2016 was killed in a car accident on Syene Road. That was the year before a year after the young lady Allison Norland was killed in that car accident. So the class of 2016 lost 2 children, or 2 kids. He was about two months away from graduating, and then my youngest is a sophomore here. But we, so that's this kind of. But so I've had the connection here. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, my wife and I have married for a long time. We got divorced, and so I live in McFarland now, but I'm still. My heart's here because my boys went to school here, so. But, I know it's a lot of information, but I'm an oversharer by heart, by nature.
Well, he's leaving here and going to audiology.
Oh yeah,
Right, is it audiology?
yeah, go to yeah.
You know, one thing that he got from audiology, if anybody's interested, is he's got a thing that he connects to the television.
Mm-hmm.
He wears hearing aids,
Oh yeah.
and he can turn the volume off and still hear.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, so if I don't want to watch his football game,
Yep.
he watches it, and I don't have to listen to it.
The medical
And he got it
advances.
free.
Yeah, the advances on the hearing, all the hearing type assistive devices, hearing aids. I mean, the VA gets the top of the line hearing aids, and if you're on a copay status, if you're in the VA healthcare system, even if it's not service connected, if you need hearing aids, if you're in the system and you're eligible for healthcare, you can get hearing aids through the VA. Even if it's not a service connected disability. If you're on a copay status, generally speaking, the most that's going to cost you is 3 specialty care visits. It might cost you $150. Some people get it free, 100% free, including batteries and stuff now are rechargeable. A lot
You
of.
get batteries free here too. So usually-
But the most it would cost you is about $150, so 3 $50 payments. But those hearing aids are several $1,000s. They could be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000.
These are $7,000.
$7,000, and the VA, Uncle Sam will pay for them. So, yep.
And all of his care for it, like he feels like he's losing some hearing,
Oh,
so
yeah.
he's going in to be tested today to see if he
What
needs.
what was your job in service?
Frontline.
That was just a girl father.
Okay, so infantry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you file a claim? We should file a claim for you.
That's what I was going to ask you, if he should come in and just
Absolutely.
go over what he might be eligible for.
Because we could file a claim and get the VA to say it's related to your service. And then, yeah, give our office a call.
We will.
Please give our office a call. Again, it could be decades later, and I can't guarantee that they'll say yes. But we say, when I was in the military, I did this. Now, were you after the military? Were you a jackhammer operator, or did you?
We have a frontline.
Okay, so if you had a lot of noise exposure when you were young in the military, we would just make a case. We believe that it's related to the military exposure. They may say no. They may say it's due to post-service exposures. But the worst, our philosophy is the worst they're going to do is say no. The VA isn't going to just arbitrarily pull your name out of the hat and say, let's give this guy benefits, let's give this lady benefits. We have to make an effort to try to do it. The system is designed to be an objective process. So we put together a statement talking about the exposures. We give them a copy. They would get your most recent hearing information at the VA. They'd look at your military records, and then we'd see. Again,
Is it one and done, or?
no. The question was, is it a one and done attempt? So if you file, can you file again? You can absolutely file again. The caveat would be, though, is let's say you filed for hearing loss years ago and they denied it, and it's been more than a year since you got denied. Now you have to have what's called new and relevant evidence to reopen the claim. So the relevancy would be what? I said, clinical diagnosis, chronic condition, and a connection to service. If it's denied, it's either denied for whatever the condition is, it's denied for usually one of 2 reasons. Either there was no clinical diagnosis of whatever the condition was, or there's no connection to service. Our job would be to help try to identify, if it was previously denied, what's the missing element, and then we try to go from there. So if it was denied because they said no connection to service, now we can talk about, okay, let's try, if it's a hearing loss, it could be for any condition, but let's say it's hearing loss, so we'd say, let's connect you with a private audiologist that will maybe give you an opinion, to write up an opinion letter. So it's pretty much never there's never a say never kind of situation. We can at least try, but our job again is to try to help build that case and see what they say. You had a question, sir? Say again?
Pretty good. I would put Could you write it down?
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Okay. Yeah. What's that? One of the things you said, 100% now, yeah. When you talk about, sometimes you say, one part I understood is that you should have gone to our office first or something. Sometimes people try to file claims on their own, or they have someone that really doesn't do the work in that that isn't their specialty. I'll be nice about this. There are things out there, people out there that are not affiliated directly with the VA. They're not affiliated directly with the County Veterans Service Office. They're not affiliated directly with the state VA. And they're referred to as claim sharks, that out there that charge people to file claims. And the reason they exist is probably just because the demand is so great. But some of them are unscrupulous. Some of them have, their interest is making money. Our office, we are 100% free. Taxpayer dollars, all of our, as taxpayers, fund our office according to the state statute. We get, you might be surprised, federal money, our office gets $0 from the federal government. $0. From the state VA, we get a grant from the state VA. Our grant we get from the state of Wisconsin annually is less than $19,000. Our office budget is $1.3 million. We get basically we get no outside money. It's all taxpayer dollars that fund our office.
In Dane County.
In Dane County. And same with all of my counterparts. However, the return on the investment in the disability compensation and the needs-based pension benefit in fiscal year 2023, $116 million came into the Dane County taxpayer pockets, the people, that men and women that served, survivors, $116 million. Some of that is through people filing claims on their own, but a huge percentage of that is through, we've been instrumental in that.
And that's not taxed.
That is non-taxable income that comes in. Another thing that you talk about is what happens is, unfortunately, people will file a claim, and let's say it gets approved, and they say to us, do you mean I could have, once they realize they had a favorable outcome, they say, are you saying that I could have filed this 5 years ago or 10 years ago? And the answer, unfortunately, is yes. But the VA won't go back. It's going back retroactively it's a very rare situation that allows for that. The majority of the time, it's only from the date of, if now we're here in 2025 and we're filing a claim and they grant it, or let's say we file a claim today and it takes 4 months to process. It'll come back and it'll be retroactive to today's date. But they're not gonna go back the 5-10 years of when you first got diagnosed with the condition. There's some weird nuances that allow for certain things, but generally speaking, it's from that moment in time forward. So the sooner you can connect with our office, the sooner you can connect with Greene County or Rock County and inquire about stuff, the better. Yes.
When I started going to the VA, the hospital, getting my care there, I had a hard time figuring out, I did some of the stuff over the phone and then I did some of the paperwork. The person who helped me the most was VA eligibility in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to the eligibility, she was able to look up my chart, or my file, she was able to look up stuff and answer questions right there and say yes, no, and it was better than doing, because I kept getting misinformation somehow in there between doing it over the phone and doing it over that.
Yep.
And that was like the first step of getting the care, because then they made my appointment.
Yeah.
Then you see the doctor, and she asks all the questions about, you know, what you were exposed to. Then you do all the, then they work with, for your disability stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you had problems. We took you in there then, I took you. And that lady in the eligibility, especially like, you found out your records weren't there, or something was lost at Camp Lejeune. Something was lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you bring all your stuff with you, she will tell you right away whether you
And you're talking
belong.
about at the hospital?
Yeah,
So-
right at the hospital.
Yeah.
Go into it's around the corner. You go all the
By
way.
the emergency department, yeah.
Yeah, or across from the lab or something.
Yeah.
But right away, you know, it's like
Yeah.
they.
And they're not technically, they don't do the disability claims there.
No, but
they're
she
gonna,
tells
they're
you
gonna give
how
you
to-
our brochure and send you to us.
Right,
But
and
they
she gives
at
you
least
the number.
explain it. The system is, and this is precisely why we exist. The system is inherently bureaucratic.
Yeah.
There's so much red tape, so many nuances, so many.
Yeah. You bring your taxes and everything,
Yep.
and she will help you fill it out right there,
Yep.
and then turns it in.
That's perfect.
On the computer right there.
Mhm.
She was able to look up your records when we went, because you were out in Colorado and you had problems getting connected.
Yeah.
Getting everything done, and that lady started the ball rolling for him.
Yep.
And started it for, started for
Absolutely.
me the year before, and then, because whether you're gonna take the VA benefit or not, it's you gotta go get the health stuff looked at to apply to get.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many. Yeah, I mean, there's no direct requirement to be seen at the VA for healthcare in order to file a claim. But obviously, if we file this gentleman's claim for hearing loss, it's going to be easy because the VA has those records. There's also, as I was kind of saying before, there's nothing that says someone can't go to one of those third-party outfits to file a claim, or someone can't try to do it on their own. But here's what we see all the time, and in my 20th year in the office, I've seen a lot of this stuff. When someone tries to have someone else file that doesn't really do that all the time, or if they try to do it on their own, what you're doing is you're increasing frustration because you don't have someone guiding you. You also, if something gets messed up, it's hard, if you're coming to someone that does it all the time, not saying that we can't, we could certainly miss something. However, if you go to an office that does it all the time, the chances of something getting messed up are less likely. And it's much easier to prevent something from getting messed up than it is to unmess it up. Or to prevent it from getting effed up, then to un-eff it. So our job is to try to help with that and try to make the process as painless as possible. We can't guarantee any of that. We can't guarantee success every time, but we can guarantee that, hey, we're gonna give it the old college try and make sure that we connect you. When we're writing up a statement regarding a certain condition, so if we're doing your hearing loss claim, we're gonna write up a statement about, you know, I was a combat infantryman in Korea. I was directly engaged in combat activities and exposed to blasts and gunfire and all this kind of stuff. We're gonna put a statement together like that. And certain we know how to say certain words that are advantageous for that individual. And it just helps to increase the chances of success, is what it really does.
Our daughter and son-in-law that I spoke about have spoken very highly of the services that you guys have provided, especially like the daughter having her disability increased. And
Yeah.
they've both been
Good.
very pleased with your service.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just one point of information, when we were fully retired, when you file a tax return, you have to prove you have insurance, so the government will charge you for not having insurance, and one of them was a drug
Yes.
plan. And so I had to buy this $30 a year drug plan that I was never gonna be able to utilize until I went to the VA, and he says, well, you qualify for VA for drugs. He sent me a letter, and now I don't have to buy that $30
Exactly.
policy anymore.
Yep, and you know, once a year, you get, right before tax time, you get that letter that says that you're VA eligible. That letter, you don't even technically have to send it into the government, but you have that in the event that they audit you, you're in compliance with the Affordable Care Act because you have health
The
coverage.
tax guy wants to have it so that he can
Just
see
in
it,
case, yep,
and that way he checks yes on the,
yep,
whatever he checks on the tax return.
yeah, exactly.
And he won't check it without something, so.
Yes,
This is just a little off, but I see this as a Dane County service brochure.
Yes.
If we wanted to know about Greene and Rock counties, how would we?
what I can do is, so for Greene and Rock County, I can look up their numbers and make sure you have their numbers. Are you Greene or Rock, or where are you?
I represent a group for 3 counties, and so here's Dane, but I just need
Okay.
Greene and Rock.
Yep, yes, thank you. Give our office a call, we'll help you out, sir.
He's gotta get you $100.
Okay, sounds good. I'll make sure, I'll get you those numbers in a moment, I can look those up. What's that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all so much. I'll stick around if you have any questions.